I'm under the impression there will never be a Tony Rice ever again.
Not even grabbing a player from another genre. I mean, you can see that in the difference between Jake Berkman and Trey Hensley.
And I'm like, what in the world? I'm practicing for like hours and hours and hours. I'm reading Guitar Magazine.
Hey folks, so today we're doing something a little bit different. And it's been a while since I've said that, actually. We're sitting down for a talk with my buddy Mickey Abraham. I mention him in a lot of videos. It comes up a lot, but I figured we should just have a sit down and talk about some guitar stuff. So yeah, this is the episode 1 of Marcel and Mickey Talk Music.
It's nice to be seen on the internet with you because on the flat picking side, people never see my face. You know, a lot of people, if they don't look me up on social media, have no idea what I look like or sound like.
The mystery is blown.
I've run into people at festivals from the magazine. They're like, "You're a lot younger than I thought you were."
Yeah, well, dude, why don't we talk about how people might know you, where they've seen you before? So you just mentioned Flat Picking Guitar Magazine, yeah?
Yeah, that's where I think where you first we encountered each other.
Go ahead, tell that story.
Yeah, I mean, my abridged version of that. I don't really do lessons on YouTube very often, although you inspire me a lot to do something like that. But I put a few ideas up there, and after one of the 3 ideas, you found it, searching flat picking lessons, I suppose. And if you recall, you were like, "Is this the one lick you used like 3 years ago on Whiskey Before Breakfast on your 3rd break?" You know, and it was like, it wasn't even like, "Hey, nice lesson, bro." It was like so exacting that I knew I would be future friends with this person.
That's so funny. Yeah, that is how we met though, and we started emailing after that, and we're buddies now.
So we're gonna free flow this conversation. Who knows what we're gonna end up talking about? You know, hopefully music.
Hopefully.
If you wanted me to show you a lick, I prepared a particular lick to share. If you listen to like David Grisman and Joe Satriani in Dream Theater, you'll know I have no original chords or licks or ideas. It's like a triad thing that you would play over a C chord. Like this is the shape here. So 1, 2, 3. So I'm basically starting like a half step below the 3rd, and then moving into the 3rd, and then going a whole step above the 5th, and then landing on the chord. So it's really cool because you're getting like the classic, but you're getting, and then a half step below the root, a half step above the 3rd. And this is when it gets kind of cool because when you go a half step below the 5th, you get that flat 5th, but it sounds like in a different context. Something like that.
Yeah, that is cool, man. Yeah, that's nice.
Marcel did it in his mind and then played it right back.
I did. Yeah, that's a nice sequence that you got there. You've taught me a lot of cool sequences, though. Did you know that I didn't know? I mean, I'd heard it, but I had never thought about how to play this one until you showed it to me. Like that.
We were jamming, and you're like, "Mickey, you do that a lot." I swear I picked that up from Mike Marshall and Daryl Langer. And I remember I was at like Springfest or Magnolia Fest back in like 2002, and the whole weekend Mike and Daryl were playing with people. And they're all over the place going da 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 da. I was like, that's the lick, man.
It is the lick. It's sweet. I still never use it, but I should.
That's really interesting to remember that.
You showed me another really cool one too, and I'm not sure I've ever talked about it on YouTube, but I did use it on Instagram. And now I have to try to remember how to play it. Yeah, it was like a chromatic leading tone, and then a 3rd up. This is hard. So on and so forth, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things that will sound totally out, but yet make some kind of sense with something you've heard before.
Not to interrupt you, but about that lick, I remember you were doing it Mixolydian though. You're using it over like a dominant situation, right? Right?
Yeah. It works the most, I think, over a static G7.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but you could use it over a C to go even a little bit more outside. Like, it's a little bit more inside over the G. I think that also, like, flat picking to me was like the holy grail of like learning how to solo over G, C, and D. It just how do you solo over changes, which is so freaking interesting to me that like once I learned a lick and I had a grasp on the G run, for example, I wanted to learn another lick until the language became, a more accessible language. Before bluegrass, I was practicing just a bunch of stuff like. And then someone would play something like and I wouldn't be able to make a solo that made sense over it. And I'm like, what in the world? I'm practicing for like hours and hours and hours. I'm reading Guitar Magazine. I'm learning Joe Satriani songs. Why can't I play over a 3-chord blues? And I got to the idea where maybe I was targeting a root and fifth inside a pentatonic box or something. But until I learned until I learned the chords, that changed the way I even heard music forever. Everything that I heard, all the melodies started reacting to the chords behind it, and my brain kind of latched onto that, and I got it.
Did you ever that kind of playing, what we're talking about, like playing through chords? Did you ever turn that into some like nerdy exercise? Like, did you ever do like dominant pentatonic scales, like this kind of thing, and then resolve it to like, and then like go around the circle, like constantly finding new ways to resolve it? You kind of get what I'm getting at?
Not exactly, but what did you just play? What was that?
Yeah, so I'm thinking like A7 dominant pentatonic, so it's like major pentatonic, but I'm changing all the 6 to 7s.
Maybe I have a different.
I'm thinking major pentatonic.
Ah.
Yes. So if you were a nerd, let's just take those.
And then G and then C. I've actually never done that exact thing. And not only have I never done that exact thing, what I was going to say about dominant pentatonics is I always call dominant pentatonic. I guess there's always different names for different things, which is why through the years, over many decades, I have, different names for different things because different people call different things different names. For me, the dominant pentatonic has always been the minor pent with a major third because it has the flat 7 in it. So it sounds like this. That's dominant pentatonic for me.
That's funky. Yeah, wow, interesting.
That's what I've always called dominant pentatonic, but yours makes a lot of sense too. I wonder what I would call that one. Major flat 7. I don't know. It doesn't have a major 7, but there are all kinds of pentatonic scales that are fascinating. So many cool pentatonic scales. A lot of these licks I learned from friends that play. Like I got to give a name drop to Brett Gardner. I learned more from him. He's a friend that lives in New Orleans, plays jazz. Usually there's a bebop night in Tallahassee, and I would go and watch jazz players play. And one time there was like these group of college kids playing like Django style gypsy jazz at the bar here in Tallahassee. And usually it's straight ahead bebop jazz, but these guys were doing like lay around the shack till the mail train comes back, rolling in my, I was like, who are these guys, And they're like, I was like, what in the world?
On this gypsy jazz tangent, here's another pentatonic scale. So A minor pentatonic, right? But you change all the 7s to 6.
That's a good one, man. All those kind of pentatonics are ones that I never even dreamed existed when I played. My first guitar playing exposure was Nirvana. My parents played folk music. GCD. Growing up, and that's like where my brain comes from. Just always really blown away that I actually even have some understanding, of how this stuff works, because it's really it's really fun, because I think I always wanted to, and that's really what the difference between, I think, people like you and I and a lot of the students that it might seem so mystical, but it's really stuff that you want to know, it becomes a part of, it's like, for me, it was never practicing and never work on licks for hours and ideas. It's like what I did when I was avoiding work.
Dude, I say that all the time. I always tell people that guitar was my anti-work. It's the thing I did when I was avoiding real work, and that meant I practiced all the time.
You sound really good, Marcel. I'm amazed by how you master what you're doing for each lesson. I feel like I wouldn't. You're doing some complex songs and complex ideas that I know you're learning songs and transcribing them that week. It's one thing to transcribe it, it's another thing to play it.
And I like to call attention to when I mess things up, right? When it's not perfect. Like in the recent Molly Tuttle video, I play along to her weird fiddle tune. I don't even remember how to play it. And but it's really cool. It's really interesting, really strange, not normal flat picking stuff. And at the end of the guitar demo in the beginning of the video, I say, first take, that was take one, and I'm all excited. And rather than record a better take, I was like, hey, wouldn't that just be funny if I, you heard like the kind of sloppy take, but afterwards you hear me all excited. And so I left that one in.
Absolutely. So yeah, just the idea of the social media, I'm under the impression there will never be a Tony Rice ever again. And the last legendary flat picker was Brian Sutton, the last one, because he came on the scene like he was kind of taking that really legendary spot right before the internet took over. So there was a slight bit of mystique of who Brian Sutton was and how he played like that. With so many avenues to hear and see, it's almost like printing too many baseball cards.
Yeah.
Hence, devaluing them when you print too many of one card. They're not worth anything. Now, if you talk to a 15-year-old kid, they might actually see Billy Strings and Molly Tuttle the way that I saw Brian Sutton. They might actually feel that. I don't know, because they grew up in a world where that is just there. But to me, the leaders of the scene are so accessible. It's not quite the same. And I use Brian Sutton and flat picking as an example, but this could be equated to anything: basketball, if you're into theater, actresses and actors, whatever.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the younger people, they really value the accessibility, and then to them as a generation, I think that that's a really big thing. So we went from this moment where all of our pop stars and everyone that was really interesting, was completely out of touch, to a place where you could just tweet at anyone. And that has interesting ramifications on a genre like bluegrass, where we're talking about people being really prolific and masters of their instruments, because it means, hey, you can just hop on Trey Hensley's Instagram and be like, how'd you play that lick?
But there's also the idea that for someone really talented like Trey, you can go onto the internet and find clips that he would not necessarily put on the internet, where it's like him and or for example, no one ever saw Tony Rice playing in a restaurant, where every clip of him was off the Merlefest video. No one ever saw anything other than that one video of him playing in Merlefest or something like that. There's very few recorded footage. So I'll give you an example. For example, you never saw somebody like Wes Montgomery play in a bunch of restaurants, but that's what you might see if you search somebody like Grant Gordy.
Oh yeah,
on YouTube, right? So Grant Gordy would be a modern day, to me, Wes Montgomery is a modern day jazz master of an acoustic guitar. He's like a true master of his craft. But the actual connotation of what you get is different than what you get when back in the 50s or 60s, because there's so much uncontrolled footage.
You're onto a good point. I think the accessibility has kind of killed the living legend in a way. You can find so much content about every person that it's hard to be a living legend.
And again, I say maybe a teenage person, like my teenage students, would actually think that way about a Molly Tuttle or a Brian or a Billy Strings or something, which is, I guess, the closest thing that people would say is a famous flat picking guitarist today.
What is really cool about the modern scene, though, is that when you listen to old Tony Rice recordings, sometimes there's like a jump. When you listen to the first Tony album and you listen to like the stuff even right after that, like, I don't know, JD Crow stuff or whatever, you can hear like, oh, Tony's changing. There's like, there should have been a record like in between here maybe, but we don't have that record. Whereas with all of these new people, I mean, you can find videos from them playing from any given month of any given year, right? You
Absolutely.
can like stack it all up.
Man, Tony's playing changes in that such an interesting way, and he always has like 5 to 7 licks, and they change throughout the years.
Yeah.
So he's got these 5 or 7 now, and then he starts doing the, which certainly didn't happen at the beginning. That was a later incarnation of a Tony lick, and then somewhere along the line he started doing this one. Which is that one. I wonder why he always relies on that one so much.
Play me the one where he like goes brew down, like he does that. He does.
This one I learned originally off the Unit of Measure album, and it's one that I don't really transcribe Tony anywhere near as much as you do, but I just kind of heard it and I was like, man, I think I know what he's doing there. It's just regular G, and then down here. Is that the one you're thinking of?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
To me, Tony Rice is almost like the David Gilmour of flat picking. Is even though he's so hot and so fast, he himself is like a simpleton, and Grisman is too. So like the idea that you only have so many notes and so many ideas, it gives you a certain style. To me, like if you know too many licks, you sound like a studio guy. You can be a chameleon, and everyone's like, oh, he's so great, he can play anything. He's so great, he can play anything. But sometimes that can be like, well, then who are you? If you can play anything, what are you as a musician? But then you get someone like David Grisman who plays a lot of the same licks, or Tony Rice plays a lot of the same licks, and that in turn makes you sound like yourself.
And that's an unfortunate thing for all of us guitar nerds, because we go out, we learn everyone's licks and everyone's language, and then we might struggle to sound like ourselves at certain moments. It is kind of an interesting path, because when people try to play, or when people do play really fast, a lot of times they're so limited by the speed, even if they are capable players, that they end up playing, I don't want to say trash, but trash, right? You transcribe a lot of these super, super quick, I'm even going to name players so they can get mad at me later, but you transcribe some of the really fast stuff that like Jake Workman or Trey Hensley play, and I got blown away that they can play that fast, right? I can't play that fast. But then I look at it and I'm like, oh yeah, right? Like I know this stuff. Like I'm not going to take any of this.
You just said it right there, and Jake Workman's a great example. Like that guy I've never really heard as a flat picker with that kind of like almost like metal kind of technique, and he's so relaxed and so clean, but yet the actual language is something that my brain, I actually understand the language that he's playing. And that's actually, I suppose, even to his credit, because like I say, I don't want to take it too far out. He's actually playing lines that I can tell where they're constructed from. Except, I really follow his language really well, and other players not quite as well. But to me, something like Jake Workman seems like in some way would actually be attainable if you actually put a lot of metronome work and practice those solos with a metronome. And I say that because he doesn't play a lot of those really interesting timing things the way a blues player, or the way he subdivides the beat in like a grid fashion.
Yeah,
and
perfect.
I hear it in a different way. Like I hear that because I studied flat picking, and I have a mad respect for it because I understand it and feel it. And for someone that plays blues, they have no concept of playing, like these kind of licks. But the subdivision of the beats, right? He's playing eighth notes or triplets exclusively, playing completely on the grid. And when you listen to other kinds of blues players play, and the way they subdivide the beat in a way that's a little less, metronomic or something like that.
Not even grabbing a player from another genre. I mean, you can see that in the difference between Jake Workman and Trey Hensley. Trey Hensley has a much more like fluid feeling. I mean, when he wants to, he downright just sounds like a blues player. And we know that Trey's great at like country and blues and like other genres, but Trey, even when he's playing fast, has moments where he feels very lyrical. He's groovier.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, when I was younger, I actually went through a phase when I was like in my early 20s and teenager that I thought the pentatonic scale was boring, and I didn't even actually, when someone played blues or played something that was even remotely based on, I didn't get it because my ear was not attuned to the micro bends and to the feel and to the way guys would actually the way they would actually feel the licks. And like over the last 20 years, my brain is actually more than even technically improved. I think my ear has opened up. and I hear things way differently, to the point where like I hear a blues player, like someone like John Mayer, blows my mind way more than someone who's going like, like playing like a bunch. Whereas when I was 20, I would practice that forever. Like that stuff does not even interest my brain at all. Like I just don't hear in. But what's interesting is I loved the music. I just didn't. I loved the idea of music, and I was even moved by the music. I really was. But I really get Lion is so much different now, and I hear it so different.
I don't know how often we're gonna do these. I hope we do them often. But yeah, this is the start of Marcel and Mickey talk music. Whatever I said at the beginning. I think that's what I said at the beginning. Do you want to say where the people can find you, or you want to plug anything that you do?
How about Belle and the Band on Facebook? Definitely check out BELLE and the band. I play with my friend Catherine. She's an amazing singer and songwriter, and we're working on a concept album called a folk opera. It's really cool, and you can follow that on Facebook. Voices a folk opera. VOICES : Voices : a folk opera. This plug will ensure that nobody goes to find it.
That's great, man. You are not ready for the talk show circuit. We're gonna show you how it's done. All right. Anyway, if you liked watching this conversation with the biggest, baddest Billy Goat in the barnyard and Mickey Abraham, we'll come up with some kind of barnyard nickname for you as well.
Some people call me the Rabbi.
The Rabbi. Yeah, if you like this conversation with the big bad Billy Goat and the Rabbi, you should subscribe to this channel, like, comment. You know what to do. You're on YouTube. You should also check out lessonswithmarcel.com, and you can find the merch and the tabs and the articles and the Skype lessons, all that good stuff. But we'll see you soon for another video.
That old beggar boy and the bootlegger's wife.